Why does the world hate the Jews? The untold truth. There is a people who make up less than 0.2% of the world's population. Yet their name is tied to some of the darkest rumors in history. They've been accused of controlling banks, manipulating the media, even secretly ruling the world. But why? How could such a small community become the target of centuries of hatred, fear, and persecution? Do they truly hide a terrifying secret? Or is this all the result of fear, jealousy, and myths repeated for over 2,000 years? Today, we uncover the untold truth behind one of history's most controversial stories. Why has the world feared the Jewish people? A 2,000-year story of survival, myths, and hatred. Have you ever wondered why one people, making up less than 0.2% of the world's population, have been at the center of so many stories, suspicions, and hatreds? The Jewish people. For centuries, whispers and rumors have painted them as hidden rulers of finance, manipulators of politics, even architects of secret world orders. Wherever instability arises, someone eventually blames the Jews. But why? Is it because they are successful, resilient, and well-educated? Or does the answer lie in something darker? An ancient history of prejudice, fear, and misunderstanding that has stretched for more than 2 millennia? This is not a story of secret plots. It is the story of how myths, fear, and human cruelty built one of history's longest-lasting hatreds. And it begins thousands of years ago. People set apart. In the ancient world, identity was usually tied to empire or kingdom. Egyptians, Babylonians, Romans, all belonged to vast civilizations with gods, rulers, and traditions shared by the majority. But the Jews were different. They worshipped one invisible God in a world of many. They kept their own dietary rules, their own holidays, their own sacred texts. They lived among other peoples but never fully blended in. This separateness often inspired suspicion. In Egypt, the Hebrew Bible tells of Jews living as slaves, forced to labor under the Pharaoh. Whether or not every detail is historically exact, what we do know is that Jewish communities in Egypt were often treated as outsiders, confined to second-class roles. Later, under the mighty Roman Empire, tensions escalated. In the year 70 CE, after a failed Jewish revolt, Roman armies destroyed the Second Temple in Jerusalem. Hundreds of thousands were killed. Survivors were scattered across Europe and the Middle East. This marked the beginning of the diaspora, a 2,000-year era in which Jews lived as minorities in lands not their own. And as minorities, they became convenient scapegoats. The people who killed Christ. Another turning point came with the rise of Christianity. The New Testament tells the story of Jesus' execution under Roman authority. Yet over centuries, many Christian leaders and communities shifted the blame onto Jews, branding them as Christ killers. This idea, though never universal, spread widely across medieval Europe. It turned theological difference into deep suspicion. Jews were not simply outsiders. They were accused of betraying God himself. From then on, when societies faced crises, the Jewish minority became an easy target. Life in the ghettos. By the Middle Ages, Jewish communities in Europe faced strict restrictions. They were forbidden from owning land in many regions. They were often forced to live in walled-off districts known as ghettos. They could not serve in government or the military. Instead, they were pushed into professions others avoided: tanning hides, butchering animals, or, most fatefully, lending money. Why money lending? Because Christian law forbade charging interest on loans. Someone still had to do it, and Jews, already excluded from most respectable trades, were permitted, sometimes forced, into that role. This created a dangerous stereotype: Jews as greedy moneylenders. The reality? Most Jewish families remained poor, barely surviving in crowded ghettos. Yet when kings, nobles, or peasants fell into debt, who was blamed? The Jewish lender. This stereotype grew into one of the deadliest myths in history: scapegoats in times of plague. In the mid-14th century, Europe was struck by the Black Death. Between 1347 and 1351, nearly half the continent's population perished. No one understood germs or medicine. People searched for someone to blame. Rumors spread Jews had poisoned wells. They had caused the plague to wipe out Christians. It was a complete fabrication, but fear does not need truth. Mobs stormed Jewish quarters across Germany, France, and Spain. Entire communities were burned alive. In the city of Strasbourg, nearly 2,000 Jews were massacred in a single day, February 14, 1349. Once again, Jews were not just victims of disease, but of rumor and rage. Expulsions and wandering. From England in 1290 to France in 1306, to Spain in 1492, Jews were repeatedly expelled. Sometimes whole populations were forced to leave overnight, abandoning homes and livelihoods. Many fled eastward, into Poland and Eastern Europe, where rulers initially welcomed them for their skills in trade and finance. But safety never lasted forever. In wave after wave, Jews became pawns in the political and religious struggles of the lands where they settled. When famine struck, when war broke out, or when the economy collapsed, blame fell once again. The myth of power. By the modern era, a dangerous paradox had formed. On one hand, most Jews were poor, confined to ghettos, and legally discriminated against. On the other hand, a handful of Jewish families, often in finance or trade, became highly visible. This visibility fueled the myth that all Jews were powerful. Stories circulated of Jewish bankers secretly controlling monarchs, of Jewish merchants manipulating markets. These tales were collected into one of the most infamous forgeries in history, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, written in Russian in the early 20th century, were claimed to reveal a Jewish plot for world domination. It was a complete fabrication, yet it spread across Europe, the Middle East, and even America, feeding centuries of suspicion. The Holocaust, hatred at its deadliest. By the 1930s, antisemitism had been woven so deeply into European culture that Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party could build their ideology upon it. They portrayed Jews as both powerless vermin and powerful conspirators. A contradiction that hardly matters, because fear is stronger than logic. The result was the Holocaust, the systematic murder of 6 million Jews. Families gassed in concentration camps. Communities erased from maps. Centuries of prejudice culminating in industrialized genocide. The Holocaust was not the product of one man's hatred alone. It was the final, horrific consequence of 2,000 years of scapegoating. A homeland reborn. After World War II, most Jewish survivors had no homes to return to. Villages were gone. Families wiped out. Out of this devastation, the State of Israel was founded in 1948. But the birth of Israel also ignited new conflicts, especially with Palestinian Arabs who saw their land and lives displaced. The cycle of fear and hatred continued, now in a new form, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And once again, Jews worldwide often felt the backlash, as old prejudices mixed with modern politics. Why the myths persist? Why do myths about Jews persist even today? The answer lies in the human tendency to fear what is different. Jews have long valued education and resilience, traits that help them survive repeated expulsions. This has sometimes made them disproportionately successful in fields like science, business, and the arts. In fact, though less than 0.2% of the world's population, Jewish people have won over 20% of all Nobel Prizes. But this success also feeds jealousy and suspicion. It's easier to believe in a secret plot than to accept centuries of hard work, tradition, and perseverance. The truth is simple. Jews are not a hidden empire, nor a world-controlling elite. They are, and always have been, a people struggling to survive and thrive in a world that often turned against them. Antisemitism in the modern world. If you think antisemitism is only history, think again. In recent years, violent attacks against Jewish synagogues in Pittsburgh, Halle, and other cities shocked the world. Online, conspiracy theories about globalist elites often recycle the same old anti-Semitic myths in new clothing. In the Middle East, the unresolved Israeli-Palestinian conflict fuels anger that sometimes spills over into broad hatred of Jews as a people, just as old prejudices once did in Europe. History shows us a dangerous truth. Hatred rarely dies, changes form, finds new voices, but it always returns unless confronted. Lessons from 2,000 years. The story of the Jewish people is not just one of persecution. It is also one of resilience, From ancient slavery to medieval ghettos, from exile to genocide, Jews survived. They carried their traditions, their knowledge, their stories, passing them on to the next generation no matter how dark the times. That resilience is why myths persist, because survival itself, against all odds, looks like mystery to those who cannot explain it. But the lesson is not just about Jews. It is about humanity. History proves that whenever a group is scapegoated, whether Jews, immigrants, minorities, or any outsiders, society slides toward violence. Hatred of one group always opens the door to hatred of many. A final question. So why has the world feared the Jewish people? Not because of secret power or hidden plots, but because fear itself needs an enemy. And for 2,000 years, Jews have too often played that role in humanity's imagination. The real story is not about hidden empires. It is about the danger of prejudice. It is about the human cost of myths. And it is about one of the longest, most painful, but also most extraordinary journeys of survival in history. The next time you hear a rumor, a conspiracy, or a whisper about the Jews, ask yourself, is this history repeating itself? Or is it finally time for humanity to break the cycle?